Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
Going on to the next example of fetal alcohol syndrome. Let's take a look at fetal alcohol syndrome through the lenses of the various principles and theories that we've learned. Fetal alcohol syndrome then is when a mother drinks alcohol when she is pregnant. The fetus inside her is affected, sometimes in a very adverse way, by the alcohol in her blood. Alcohol goes into her blood, that blood is shared with the child in her fetus.
Would that be the same thing as a lady that's pregnant and she's smoking?
Excellent. So that would not be fetal alcohol syndrome, but it's the same thing. She is putting into her body certain chemicals. And we can use any example, right? She ate a piece of chocolate cake. All that's going into her bloodstream. Whatever she eats or drinks or inhales, it's all becoming part of that child's nourishing as
I
well.
remember one time I was going, we were walking, driving down the street, and there was a lady, and we were going to give her $1 too. She was pregnant, found out she was smoking cigarettes.
So we're going to focus here on alcohol, but we could do the same thing. We could take the time to be able to figure out what would the effect of smoking be on the child as well. Let's take a look at the effect on smoking. So let's begin with, we began this course talking about relative ethics and universal ethics. So relative ethics would wonder, is it wrong to drink while pregnant simply because it's contrary to our folk way? So just because the folk way says you shouldn't drink when you're pregnant, is that what makes it wrong? Or is there something else that makes it wrong? I say, just because we think it's wrong today, drinking when you were pregnant years ago before we knew this, we didn't necessarily think the same about these things. Cultural relativism, many different societies or cultures could look at differently. So that, for instance, in some societies they could be outraged by a woman drinking when she's pregnant, and in other societies, not such a big deal. Ethical relativism would ask, are there really any permanent, universal, objective values or standards at stake here? Can we make a rule that affects all pregnant women with respect to drinking? Ethical universalism. Does the pregnant woman violate any universal standards, for instance, that we shouldn't harm innocent human beings? Can we all agree, first of all, that that fetus is a human being? And I have a feeling not everyone in this world is going to come to the same conclusion. Sometimes as Christians or Catholics we tend to think in one way, but other people may think in other ways. And so, for instance, a question like, do unborn fetuses have the right not to be harmed? It depends on one's perspective on the issue. Immanuel Kant said, what makes us different as human beings? We are rational and we are free. Is that fetus free, and is it rational? Is that fetus able to survive on its own? Is it rational? Not yet. The golden mean, remember back to virtue ethics, we talked about the golden mean, how it is that a virtue, it lies between two vices here. It seems that by drinking too much, that's one extreme. The woman drinks too much, and that alcohol affects the fetus. But what if that woman, if she goes in the opposite direction of not drinking anything, is that also an extreme? That is to say, will a sip of alcohol during your pregnancy damage that child forever? Follow me? That is to say, it seems that we don't necessarily have to go into the other extreme just to achieve the virtue. Does controlling one's desires to the proper degree allow for a single drink? Because that's what Aristotle was all about in virtue ethics. We have to control our anger, for instance, right? We have to be angry in the right way, at the right time, at the right persons. Remember all of that? Same thing with fetal alcohol syndrome, right? It's not that it's always evil. Is there a way to be able to have alcohol while you're pregnant in a way that doesn't adversely affect the child? Virtue ethics would also take a look at the habits. We know that we are a result of our habits. Okay? What happens if you've developed a habit of drinking every day? Every day you can't live without that 12-pack. And now, oops, surprise, you're pregnant. What does that mean, especially in light of this habit and this need that your body feels for alcohol? A lot that we studied in virtue ethics, natural law, had to do with happiness. Why is it that that woman is drinking? Remember back to that first lesson? Why do we choose things? We choose things because we choose the bad things, sub specie boni, believing that they're good. Why do we have a drink? Is it to harm ourselves? No, it's because of the good feeling that we get from that drink. So why is the woman choosing to drink? Well, likely because of the pleasant feeling. But the question arises, will she be happy if her child is born with fetal alcohol syndrome? If we're talking about happiness, well, why are you drinking? Well, it makes me happy. Okay? How happy are you going to be if your child is born with fetal alcohol syndrome? Divine law suggests that, for instance, the Bible says, have you read your Bibles? Drunkenness and addiction are forbidden by the Bible. That would be divine law. God says you shouldn't drink. Okay? What about human law? From the perspective of human law, there could be some laws that protect fetuses, or that don't allow pregnant women to endanger the children within them. Natural law would suggest that it's not right to endanger the life of another person. It would ask, is there a grave reason? Is there a serious reason that you should be drinking? Because if so, then maybe you should do it. The principle of double effect. Drinking alcohol in moderation doesn't put a life at risk. Which one are you intending? Are you intending to harm your child, the bad? No. What you're intending is the good, the pleasant feeling. And so the principle of double effect may play into that in some way. Ethical egoism, part of social contract ethics, talks about how it is that acting selfishly is rational. So having a drink to drown your sorrows, perfectly understandable, right? We all think of our own self-interest. You're feeling down in the dumps? Here's a drink. The principle of self-interest. But enlightened ethical egoists in social contract theory would also think about it this way. Wait a minute. Yes, it'll make me happy to take this drink, but will it make me happy to have to take care of a child with fetal alcohol syndrome for the rest of his or her life? That's not going to make me happy. So an enlightened egoist could still push away the drink. The golden rule. If I were that fetus, would I want my mother to drink alcohol? Now that I have the martini in my hand. If I were the fetus in my womb, would I want me to drink alcohol? Utilitarianism and altruism would suggest that the fetus deserves equal treatment. Remember, utilitarian focused on animals even, the respect due to animals. So there's a certain respect that seems to be due to the fetus and to other, even to non-humans. Our actions affect the happiness of another, which is the fetus. And so even if it's a common practice for women to drink during pregnancy, we can't derive an ought from an is. So even though other people are doing it, that doesn't mean that I should do it. Deontological ethics. Does the pregnant woman have a duty to abstain from alcohol? That would be the question raised there. You're pregnant. Do you have an obligation not to drink? That would be the question of deontological ethics. Duties correlate to rights. We talked about that to some extent. Does the fetus have rights that must be respected? Again, Immanuel Kant would ask, is the fetus autonomous and free? His conclusion would be. The principle of universality, we talked about that in deontological ethics as well. Would the pregnant woman wish that everyone else, including her mother, drink alcohol while pregnant? Whatever you're doing, would you want everyone else to do that? Would you want your mother to drink with you in the womb? Because remember that deontological ethics is all about being rational. It's inconsistent to say, I'll do one thing, but I wouldn't want my mother to do it if I were the fetus. That's irrational. That's inconsistent. Finally, care ethics. We conclude this course with care ethics. Does drinking while pregnant exhibit care for those in close relationship? Does it attend to the needs of my child? What does that do to the relationship that I have? Nell Noddings, love this quote. She says, it's not a question of when life begins, but when relation begins. Think about that with respect to the issue of abortion, right? It's if that woman doesn't have a relationship with that fetus, then he or she could be thinking of him or herself and his or her own self-interest, then And there's that I-it relationship rather than the I-thou relationship. It's also possible that if there's no relationship between the mother and her fetus, the connection is merely physical and not emotional. Ooh, think about that for a moment. In the instance of rape, for instance, I'm imagining if there are women who, even though they're physically connected to that fetus, are not emotionally connected to that fetus in the same way as had that fetus been born of love. And so unless the fetus is the cared for, in care ethics we talk about the one who cares and the one who's cared for, unless that fetus is the cared for, is in an I-thou relationship, the pregnant woman may not feel the love or care or concern for it. Whew, that's a tough one. But it helps us to understand it from different perspectives. Rather than just judging that woman for what she's doing as right, bad, not so bad, instead of judging her, there are different ways that we can be able to look at that same situation to arrive at different conclusions. And also be able to engage her in dialogue about it. How does she see these things? And so we could take all of these ethical principles that we've learned during these weeks of studying ethics and begin to apply them to all sorts of other issues, whether that's cheating, donating blood, gambling, alcohol or drug use, marital infidelity, sexuality, abortion, euthanasia, affirmative action, global warming, human rights abuses, taxes, terrorism, world hunger and poverty, white-collar crimes, drunk driving, etc. All of these are raised by Mitsoni. When we come to our course in social ethics, that's what we'll do is we'll each pick something that interests us, an ethical issue, and start taking a look at it from different perspectives. And what does the church say as well? Parenting licenses is the last one raised by Mitsoni. What does that mean? You know, you need a license to drive. Should we require licenses from parents as well? Ooh, that's a tough one, right? It would be an ethical question, right? If you're a parent modeling bad behaviors and being a bad model, then should you be allowed to be a parent? You'll say and then Mario.
Oh, no, es que aquí habla nada más de cuando, si la madre toma, si la madre no toma y el que toma es el papá.
That's the question I wanted to ask.
Great ethical question. So, okay, the woman has this inside her, which is why we ask the ethical question. What about the father? Is there an ethical obligation for men and or fathers and or older brothers or uncles not to drink? That could be a fascinating conversation. Do you, as an uncle, have an obligation not to drink around you? Well, virtue ethics would say, wait a minute, you're modeling, and whatever your nephews and nieces see is what it is that they're going to be repeating. Interesting. There would be different issues. Care ethics. What are you doing for those closest to you? Right? How are you caring for them and their needs?
Well, I know we're talking more about the fetus because of the ethical question. But what about what ethical would it be when the fetus is born, when it becomes a child, and the mother decides to drink and keep drinking and doing her drugs, but yet she's still breastfeeding?
Or, excellent question. So the ethics of child raising, the ethics of breastfeeding, the ethics of parenting, I mean, all of these are issues that we could take a look at. We see our family members and friends and community members who are doing certain things, and we could judge them as being right or wrong, good or bad. Wait a minute, why don't we pull out Mitsoni's book and read through it, thinking about that person and that person's situation before we judge him or her, to be able to think about how are we going to have that conversation with them.